Welcome to Horror Audio Series, where the veil between worlds grows thin, and every whisper might be a warning. Here, we don't just tell horror stories. We summon them. Turn down the lights. Turn up your fear. The nightmare begins now.
Some deaths refuse to rest. Some spirits refuse to leave. When the veil thins between the worlds, the soul possessor awakens. Welcome to Soul Possessor.
Chapter 8. The Manifestation of the Holy Church's Founder. As the blood curse ignited, searing through the veil of the living and the dead, somewhere far from the altar, beyond the tangible, beyond even memory, a tremor split the ancient soil. 3 tombs, covered in centuries of moss and silence, sealed with no names and forgotten by all, split open without touch. No hand moved, no foot approached. And yet, the earth obeyed something far older than breath. A cold wind slithered from the ruptured graves, thick with the dust of buried prayers and crushed bones. Ash spiraled upward like mournful incense, trailing across the sky like the last breath of the earth itself. And then, the heavens dimmed. Not just darkened, dimmed. As if something were draining light, erasing stars, devouring the outlines of clouds. From the eastern edge of the ancient temple grounds, a bell rang. No bell tower stood there. No priest lived to ring it. Yet, the sound came. Slow, heavy, like death itself trudging across eternity. Then came the chant. Low, hoarse but unwavering. Mani, Padme, Hum. The syllables tore through the air like rusted blades slicing flesh. It was not prayer. It was judgment. And it echoed, not just through the temple, but through Christina's bursting veins. She lay on the altar, still shackled by blood-forged chains, every artery screaming. Her muscles twitched under invisible pressure, as if her bones were being rearranged by forces beyond mortal understanding. From her shoulders to her thighs, thorned veins pulsed violently, blood coursing backward, as if dragged by some otherworldly tide. Her skin blistered, cracked, reformed, turning her into a living vessel carved in agony. Then, the ground beneath her cracked with a thunderous boom. The center of the altar erupted, not explosively, but surgically, revealing a circular ring of stone that had never been placed by human hands. It had grown, like a malign tumor from the belly of the world. Symbols emerged along its rim, neither Sanskrit nor demonic rune, but a language that predated both, etched into stone with the certainty of fate. And then a foot. Dry, crooked, wrapped in threadbare cloth that looked more like cobweb than fabric. It landed in the center of the ring with a sound like the end of a heartbeat. Then came the form. A figure emerged, an old man hunched with time, wearing only a torn gray robe, dusted with bone ash. His eyes were clouded, but burned with purpose. In his hand, a twisted staff carved from the femur of a giant beast, its tip glowing faintly like a dying ember. 2 more stepped behind him. The second, a woman, completely blind, her hair coiling and twisting like smoke against the wind. Her feet never touched the ground, and her fingers bled without wound, each drop etching an invisible mark into the air. The third, a hunchbacked man dragging a drum. No ordinary drum, but one stretched from tanned human skin, so faded it looked gray-blue. It pulsed, as if something alive was trapped beneath the surface, beating to escape. 3 souls, not saints, not priests, not even prophets, but the first ones, the ones who had sealed Satnas at the beginning. The original founders of the Holy Church. The origin of the rite that modern men had failed to understand. The master of Master Li. The keeper of the truest blood. The blind woman stepped forward. Her voice was dry, cracked, but sharp as the edge of bone. When the disciple falls into darkness, she paused, her empty sockets staring into the center of the altar, where Christina's body lay writhing beneath the silhouette of Satana's. It is the master's hand that must draw the knife. She raised her hand. Thin lines of blood drew themselves from her wrists, floating in the air like threads of crimson ink. They danced in symbols above her, spinning into spirals. Her blood wrote the law. The threads flew across the altar like a net cast into hell, weaving through the blackened air. Each strand sliced through the shadows, latching onto the corners of the altar with a pull like tendons snapping from bone. The space contracted. The world shrank around Christina's body like a coffin being shut from the outside. The hunchback did not speak. He placed a hand on his drum, bowed his head, and struck. A soundless beat. Not quiet, but soundless. It did not echo. It erased. Every sound in the forest died. The wind held its breath. The fire froze. Even Satana's whisper, still curling from Christina's lips, was swallowed in an unnatural void. The drum summoned silence, the kind that came before the first word or after the last scream. And in that silence, Satana's stirred. From Christina's body, the demon's essence spilled like molten ink. Ash-black tendrils curled up into the sky, forming the loose, towering shape of the beast, its many eyes weeping blood, its form shifting like smoke trapped in rotting lungs. And then, Master Li emerged from the shadows, his face no longer human. He moved like a beast unhinged, mouth stretched wide, chest cracked open to reveal his mark. Spiraling, bloody, glowing with Satanus' brand. The sealers had returned, and the battle had begun. Master Li lunged forward, no longer walking, no longer bound by human motion. He glided through the air, his feet dragging thin trails of soot and embers behind him. His eyes were pure white, rolled back into his skull, and from his lips came no language, only a guttural inversion of prayer, as if the chants of 1,000 corrupted monks were being vomited backward from the grave. On his forehead, the spiraling sigil of Satanus blazed. He did not speak, but the silence around him warped with pressure. His body quivered like a dying bird, moments before striking. Then, in an eruption of raw power, he shot toward the old man in gray, the one holding the bone-carved staff. The staff struck down with precision, tapping the earth in front of the altar. A crimson ring of ancient blood symbols exploded outward beneath his feet, forming a sacred barrier, a circle not of light, but of coagulated essence. Each symbol pulsed like an artery. The demonic charge was met with the power of the first blood seal. Master Li struck the barrier and rebounded violently, his body flailing midair like a broken puppet. His fingernails elongated, curling like bird talons. His scream was high-pitched, furious. The hunchback struck the drum again. Still there was no sound. But this beat robbed the air of weight. Master Li dropped suddenly to the ground as if gravity had turned hostile, slamming into the altar stone with bone-snapping force. He rose again, bone shards sticking from his jaw, and this time let loose a shriek that cracked the air like glass. But before he could attack again, the blind woman reached up and slowly removed the black cloth covering her eyes. Where there should have been eyes, there were only empty sockets. Yet from those sockets, streams of white mist poured out like incense from a broken censer. The mist curled in the air, formed into twin ropes of divine command, lashing toward Master Li. She opened her mouth and screamed. No words, only power. Pure, ancient, soul-splitting power that had not been uttered since before the Holy Church was born. The scream hit Master Li like a battering ram of lightless force. His limbs convulsed, his spine twisted, and the skin over his arms exploded, revealing the writhing sinew beneath. Flesh peeled from his chest as the force of the scream tore the demon's grip off him, piece by piece. Underneath, he was not a man anymore, only a sack of possessed meat held together by Satanas' command. But he did not fall. He roared louder. He launched again, this time not at the old man, but directly at the blind woman. She stood still, arms raised like an ancient statue awaiting ruin. But before Master Li could reach her, a spiral of blood threads, sharp as wire, sprang from her fingertips and wrapped around his body, midair. The cords latched onto his joints, pulling his limbs in opposite directions, freezing him like an insect, pinned in amber. "Cut!" the old man commanded. The hunchback moved without pause. From beneath his robe, he pulled a thin blade, the edge made of a child's skull, its surface engraved with the ancient six-syllable mantra. The blade glowed red, as though it had been soaked in the screams of martyrs. He passed like a shadow beneath Master Li, slicing upward in one clean motion. The blade tore across Li's abdomen, not deep, not wide, but precise. And that was all it took. With a muffled boom, Master Li's body erupted into a rain of black ash. There was no blood, no organs, no remains, only strands of hair, burned skin, and the stench of sulfur. His voice was the last to fade, carried on the wind. Sa, ta, nas, forever, immortal. Then silence. Final. Irrevocable. The battle was not over. The hunchback did not pause to mourn. He struck his drum 3 times in succession. Each beat pulled a piece of Christina's tainted essence from her body. Her blood, now dancing with demonic poison, sprayed outward and crystallized midair into 3 writhing red chains. The chains slashed through the altar space, locking around her. One across her eyes, one across her mouth, one across her chest, where her heart thudded beneath the mark Christina convulsed on the stone table. Her body arched in pain, the seal pressing down on her like the lid of a boiling pot. Her flesh seared with the heat of spiritual friction. From within her, Satanas roared, not aloud, but through her bones, her teeth, her every pore. The air cracked. Leaves in the forest spontaneously combusted. Flames curled from the roots of ancient trees. Fire danced upward from the earth, like geysers of burning blood. And from Christina's forehead, a third eye opened. A vertical gash, blood red, split like an axe, had struck the center of her soul. From the eye, black smoke gushed violently. It poured into the sky, where it took form. Satanas, his true essence, legless, towering. A serpentine shadow of flesh, smoke, and eyes. Hundreds of eyes that opened and closed across its shifting face. Each eye blinked in agony. Each was a soul devoured. An echo. A scream. The altar trembled beneath him, and the old man struck his staff once more. The blood symbols around the altar burst to life again, this time layering in 3 rippling waves. The first, sound, collapsed the vibrations around Satanas, trapping his voice. The second, bloodline, froze the demonic current pulsing through his veins. The third, vision, cast him into a void where no light, no thought, could survive 3 walls. 3 seals. Satana's was trapped. But the silence was unnatural, and the danger had only just begun. The altar fell into a terrible silence. Not the kind birthed from peace, but the silence of something watching, waiting, calculating. The blind woman's face twitched. "No," she whispered, her breath faltering. The old man gripped his staff tighter. His voice thundered through the cold air. "Fall back! He's breaking the 3rd seal." Too late. From Christina's forehead, the bleeding 3rd eye, a pulse surged. It wasn't light. It wasn't fire. It was a command. Something ancient, forbidden, the reversed key to the very seal they had just forged. In one blink, the vision layer disintegrated into ash. The seal that was meant to trap Satana's in the void shattered. A grotesque howl erupted from the shadow above. Half of Satana's body tore free from the prison of blood, like a tumor bursting from infected flesh. Twisted arms and veins like tarred vines clawed outward. The smoke swelled, and the altar cracked under the weight of its rebirth. Satana's voice thundered across the sky. "You are ashes, too." From his core, he expelled a beam of black smoke, thick, scorching, like molten bone. It struck the blind woman with explosive force. Boom! She flew backward, slamming into the cliffside. Blood sprayed from her eye sockets like ink, bursting from shattered glass. Her veil fell, revealing her broken mouth twisted in silent agony. The old man charged. His staff swung through the air and struck the smoke, deflecting part of it, but not without consequence. Satanus' backlash slammed him into the ground. His ribs cracked like dry wood. He coughed blood and teeth. The hunchback stumbled forward, gasping, his face drenched in cold sweat. "There's no other way," he rasped. "Burn the essence blood." He reached into his own chest, his fingers trembling, and pulled free a thin sliver of blood-encrusted bone. A shard of himself, of sacrifice. But Satanus laughed. It wasn't a laugh meant for sound. It was vibration, sickness in the marrow of the world. The demon's form swelled again. Above Christina, the shadow ballooned outward, a hideous silhouette of smoke and flesh. Then it split, cracking like a blister, and a sharp black limb jutted from within. It plunged forward and pierced straight into the hunchback's chest. He crumpled to his knees, eyes wide, mouth agape in a silent scream. The human skin drum on his back tore open. Out of it spilled thousands of delicate white threads, each a soul bound to his life's work. The drum exploded. Satana's inhaled. The white threads coiled upward, drawn into the black storm of his body like strings of soul-infused incense. The hunchback's face twisted, his blood evaporating into red mist. His soul sucked into Satanus' chest like a thread being reeled into the mouth of damnation. "No!" the old man cried, crawling forward, battered and broken. The blind woman tried to rise, but her knees buckled, her veins glowing red-hot. Still, the hunchback's hand moved, desperately. He tried to lift the last drumstick. His fingers barely curled, and then his chest caved in. His body didn't bleed. It turned to ash. Not even bones remained. Only the broken pieces of the drum lay near the center of the altar, circled by a red echo of his life's final beat. And then, through the storm, through the agony, Lucy's mother rose. She dragged her ruined body from the ashes, her skin charred and flaking, her robes torn and soaked with blood. One arm dangled limply, but in her remaining hand, she held the one thing untouched by flame, the blood spell, crafted from Christina's newborn blood. She did not scream. She did not plead. She simply walked through the inferno, through Satanas' roaring fury, and pressed the blood spell directly to Christina's forehead. The seal lit up in an instant. A blinding line of red, thick as a sword and sharp as wrath, shot from Christina's head and slashed across the demon's form like divine lightning. Gah! Satanas howled in agony. A chunk of his writhing soul was severed and yanked backward, tethered by the glowing roots of the blood tree within Christina's chest. He thrashed violently. In one last burst of rage, he cast out a backlash that sent Lucy's mother flying across the stones. Blood exploded from her mouth. She did not rise. Christina's eyes opened. They glowed red, but something else glowed deeper. The blood tree within her chest, embedded like a brand, flared with pure light. Not white, not golden, but a living crimson, pulsing with sacred rage. She hissed through her teeth, face soaked in tears and blood. "You are not me." And then she screamed. A scream that came not from her mouth, but from her very bones. "You do not belong here!" Her trembling hand reached for the blood tree, still lodged in her chest, and yanked it out. Blood fountained from her heart. Satanas shrieked inside her head. "No! Not enough! This body is all ready!" She didn't let him finish. Her hands gripped the blood tree, and she drove it back in, not to seal but to destroy. A stab through her own beating heart. Blood sprayed across the altar. But it wasn't the blood of despair. It was the blood of ending. Red flames, pure, sacred, and born from agony, burst from her chest and roared outward like a storm. They swept through the smoke, slicing Satanas' shadow into ribbons. His remaining essence howled as it was forced backward, crushed, coiled, then flung into the reforming blood seal. The old man struck his staff for the final time. The blind woman, barely able to speak, whispered the last binding syllable. Boom! The blood seal collapsed inward like a sinking grave. The stones glowed, trembled, then locked. Silence. Only a red scar remained across the altar floor, still warm, still steaming. A wound in the world. Christina dragged herself across the altar. She reached Lucy's mother, who lay still, her blood pooling beneath her. "I pretended to betray," the woman whispered through bloody teeth. "To get close, to wait for the right moment." Her trembling hand reached out. In it, two things. A worn blood talisman, a splinter of the blood tree, still pulsing. She looked into Christina's eyes. "Your blood belongs to all those who burn to protect it." Then, like a match exhausted, her body turned to ash, drifting into the wind. Christina collapsed forward, weeping against the dust. The old man came behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Satanas will return," he said hoarsely. "And we have no strength left." He looked into her eyes. "And you must be the one to prepare the final blade." Christina looked down at her hands. One held the blood spell, a legacy written in her name. The other gripped the bloodwood, the root of sealing, the mark of initiation. She whispered to herself, "This time, the blood is not for summoning, but for ending." And thus, the blood-bearer rose again, not as a vessel, but as the blade. That was Chapter 8 of Soul Possessor, but the nightmare has just begun. Secrets still hide in shadows, spirits still hunger, and the demon is not done yet. Stay with us for the next episode. The true horror awaits. Possessor, but the nightmare has just begun. Secrets still hide in shadows, spirits still hunger, and the demon is not done yet. Stay with us for the next episode. The true horror awaits.
Thank you for listening to Horror Audio Series. If the silence feels heavier tonight, if the darkness lingers longer than usual, you've already opened the door, and something may have followed you through. Don't forget to subscribe, because next time, it might be your story we tell. Sleep, if you can.